Beautiful boxing fans, when you talk about this unbelievable showdown, this magnificent fight, this iconic and historic fight between two legends, two all-time greats, two once-in-a-lifetime fighters, when you put both men in a setting like this, first boxing match in a football stadium ever in Las Vegas, first boxing event in Allegiant Stadium, nearly 70, 80,000 screaming fans, every single belt in boxing on the line, pound for pound, two top 5 pound for pound fighters of this generation. One is probably the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, and one is probably the most dynamic fighter my eyes ever saw. When you put both men in a ring, in this type of setting, and in this type of magnitude of a fight, I can tell you this. Anything and everything can happen in this fight. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because I saw in one of my last couple of videos, I mean, there's an absolute war going on in the comment section. This can happen, this can't happen. On the Xander Zayas prediction video, Xander Zayas predicted that Crawford could knock out Canelo early. And I see two sides. I see one side saying that there is absolutely no chance that this happens, and I see another side saying that, hey, listen, why not? The impossible is nothing. But let me actually break it down to you. You know, I've been watching combat sports since I was a kid. I mean, I started watching combat sports. I started watching MMA first because I used to watch WWE. I used to love Brock Lesnar, but when Brock Lesnar went to the UFC, that's when I realized what the UFC was. I believe my first time watching the UFC was after Brock Lesnar fought Frank Mir, the rematch. But I remember like watching a video on YouTube of like the highlights of the rematch, and I fell in love with the sport. And then I remember watching like Jason Mayhem Miller. He had this show called Bully Beatdown, and then I started to look who Jason Miller was. And then I remember watching his old UFC fights. But nonetheless, the reason why I'm saying this is because as a person who's been watching combat sports for a long, long time, one thing I know for a fact: don't ever rule anything out from happening. I have seen the biggest upsets in UFC history. I've seen people with the greatest chins in history get cracked in a split second. Like, for example, let me give you. When Conor McGregor fought Jose Aldo, Conor was weight drained. Conor was, I mean, that was his last fight at featherweight actually. He had no elite level experience. He was fighting Jose Aldo, the greatest featherweight of all time. A man who's never ever been dropped. A man who was known to have the greatest chin in featherweight history. And what happened? Conor McGregor knocked him out in the fastest knockout in UFC history. I mean, you could find a lot of people who would... I mean, I actually predicted that Conor was going to knock him out. But out of all the odds, and out of all the chances, and out of all the possibilities and probabilities for that fight, no one could have ever expected that Conor would have knocked out Aldo in the first punch he threw. How crazy is that? A guy who's not even in the pound for pound rankings just came in after being in the UFC for 2 years and knocked out the greatest featherweight of all time with an iron chin, never been knocked out, never been dropped, never been any of that. Cleaned his clock in one punch. So that example alone, beautiful people, that example alone should tell you and should let you know that when you talk about a fight, anything and everything is possible. Nothing can be ruled out. And now the reason why I'm saying this is because of, like I said, the Xander video. Xander said that, listen, Crawford can knock out Canelo. There's a difference between something that is not likely to happen and something that is impossible to happen. What Xander said, is it likely to happen? Is it likely for Crawford to just come into the ring and knock out Canelo in the first 3 to 4 rounds? I mean, that is highly unlikely. Let's be honest. But nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, is impossible. Both men can be stopped to the head or to the body. Both men can be outboxed. Both men can get injured in the fight. Both men can come into the fight with severe injuries, with a concussion from sparring. The possibilities and all the questions that you have when it comes to this fight are valid. And when I hear such a prediction like Xander Zayas' prediction, even though it is a crazy prediction, but like I said, I have been in this game for way. I mean, look at this. Ronda Rousey, Dana White, before she lost, he said that she is the greatest combat athlete he ever saw. She fights Holly Holm, a former boxer. And the former boxer knocks out the greatest female fighter of all time at the time, undefeated, untouchable, impeccable, with a head kick. Holly the boxer, like, I mean, even like when it comes to boxing, Chris Eubank Jr. fought the heaviest punchers at 168 in his division. The man used to literally spar David Haye, former freaking heavyweight champion. And David Haye used to say Chris Eubank's chin is granite. Chris Eubank fought the 168 super middleweight series. James DeGale, a concussive deadly puncher, couldn't stagger Eubank for once. Chris Eubank fights a former 147 pounder in Liam Smith, cleans Eubank's clock. Not because he hit harder than any of Eubank's former opponents, but I'll tell you why. Because he didn't see that punch coming. And you can arguably say that he was way drained in that fight. Now Canelo Alvarez, who knows? What if the man took a lot of damage in this sparring? What if the man is aging overnight? What if the man, like, the reason why I'm telling you all these things is because when a shocking outcome happens, it doesn't just happen out of nowhere. We think we know everything that's going on. Like for example, I just made a video and I said that Canelo's sparring boots is perfect for preparation for Crawford. But what if Canelo's confidence got taken away from getting outworked and, Boots Ennis getting the best of the work, the better of their sparring? What if Canelo, by sparring deadly punchers like Durrell Valsaint, especially Yoanelli Hernandez, and Boots Ennis, what if those heavy punchers accumulate in camp and Canelo doesn't have the best weight cut and he enters on fight night versus Crawford, who had the best camp of his life, who comes in refreshed, like, this is all I'm saying. The reason why you shouldn't rule out any possibility, firstly, you're going to have a much more of a fun time watching the fights because you won't rule anything out. So it's like, for example, me talking about these things, I have way more fun talking about these things in this way than just say that, Crawford's going to outbox Canelo, it's going to be a boring fight. Canelo's going to knock out Crawford early. Where's the fun in that? And not just when you talk about fun, when you talk about reality. Listen, history shows, history is our horoscope. And if you go back to the history of boxing, and if you go back to the history of fighting, not just boxing, the history of kickboxing, boxing, MMA, when you talk about the history of fighting, history shows us one thing. History shows us one thing, beautiful people. And what does history show us? History shows us that anything and everything is possible in a fight. When you put two men and lock them up in a ring or in a cage, expect the unexpected, and that is why we think we know. If you think you know what's going to happen, exactly what's going to happen, you would have been no no true hardcore fan would have lost any money on any fight. But the reason why all these, no disrespect to you beautiful people, but the reason why all these degenerate fans keep losing money is because they think they know, but then turns out they don't know. So only God knows, ladies and gentlemen. We think we know. Something that Canelo is going to knock him out, something that Crawford, something that this or that. You think you know, but in all actuality, only God knows what's going to happen in the future. And what is going to happen in this fight? Not too long to find out.